The grandfather paradox. Imagine having the ability to travel through time, the power to journey in a time machine. Let's take a moment to sit down and gaze into the distant past, so far back that you actually find yourself older than your own grandfather. As you reach the first door, you see him, just an ordinary man, living a normal life and doing a regular job. While you observe this and begin to settle into the moment, suddenly a thought arises, a thought powerful enough to shift everything. Let's consider what happens if you were to kill your grandfather before his natural death. It may feel brutal, but this isn't about violence. It's a question rooted in logic. If you kill your grandfather in the past, it means your father would never have been born. And if your father never existed, then you would never have been born. And if you were never born, there would be no one to travel back in time and kill your grandfather. So, how could your grandfather have died? And if he didn't die, then you were born. And if you were born, you could go back and kill him. And thus, the cycle goes on endlessly. This is the grandfather paradox, a time travel dilemma that confuses the very nature of cause and effect. We often imagine time as a straight path, past, present, future. But this paradox shatters that idea. Instead of a line, time bends into a loop, where cause and effect continuously collide. Now consider this. Is time truly linear? Or are we trapped in a loop, living in a reality where every decision and every change is intertwined with the rhythm of another moment in time? In the realm of quantum physics, some scientists believe that every decision and every possible outcome happens in its own separate universe. So if you did kill your grandfather, then that event would unfold in an alternate timeline, not the one in which you were born. But then the question arises, does every choice transport us into a new reality? And if it does, then which reality is the true one? Could our very identity be confined, a prisoner of the timeline in which we exist? In this light, the grandfather paradox becomes more than just a time travel concept. It compels us to question the very fabric of our existence. Do we genuinely understand our past? Or is it the past that molds and transforms us? And if changing the past is truly impossible, then is the future also locked in place, predetermined, and beyond our control? You begin to drift in this whirlwind of thoughts. They grow deeper, more intense, and you come to realize that this paradox isn't designed to make you stay awake. Instead, it opens the gates of sleep, leading you into a world where time, existence, and decisions are as mysterious and blurred as the landscapes of dreams. The unexpected exam paradox. This is something that defies measurement. The unexpected exam paradox. A thought experiment. Imagine a professor walks into class and announces that there will be a surprise test on any day during the week. The catch? None of the students will know beforehand which day it will happen. Immediately, confusion spreads among the students. Everyone starts speculating which day the test could be. Then the logical reasoning begins. If the test is scheduled for Friday, by the time Thursday night arrives, the students will have figured it out. Since only one day would be left, that means Friday can't be the test date because it would no longer be a surprise. So they eliminate Friday. Now, if the test is to be held on Thursday, by Wednesday evening the students will think Friday's already ruled out, so only Thursday remains. And if Thursday is the only option, it won't be a surprise either. So Thursday gets eliminated too. They continue this pattern of reasoning, ruling out Wednesday, Tuesday, and even Monday, one day at a time. Eventually, They convince themselves that a surprise test is impossible. But then comes the twist. On Wednesday morning, the professor walks in and gives the test. The students are stunned, completely caught off guard. They had logically concluded that no such test could happen. And yet, it did. That's the brilliance of it. The test was genuinely unexpected, which means the professor's original statement was true after all. Now the students are left puzzled, their minds in turmoil. They had used logic to eliminate every possible outcome, but the surprise still occurred. So what went wrong? Was their reasoning flawed? Or has the very definition of surprise changed? The unexpected exam paradox reveals the limits of knowledge. Sometimes, overthinking and deep analysis detach us from what's real. This paradox shows that logic and truth don't always align. Some things surpass reasoning, and they impact us precisely when we least expect it. Now, pause and reflect. Have you ever encountered tests in life that arrived without warning? Theseus's identity paradox, personal identity. Take a moment to think about yourself. You pick up an old childhood photo, a gentle smile, shining eyes, an innocent face. Then you glance at your reflection in the mirror today. It's still you, but something has undeniably changed. And so the question arises, are you really the same person you were in childhood? The personal identity paradox is a psychological and philosophical maze, one that challenges us with a profound question. If our thoughts, body, and memories are constantly changing, then where and what is our true identity? Picture a man named Arav. At 20 years old, he lives in a village. He reads books, dreams big. 10 years later, he moves to the city. His thoughts evolve. His friends change. His habits shift. And by the time he turns 50, he's completely transformed. His body is no longer the same. His way of thinking is entirely different. Even his memories have faded into a blur. So, is he still Arav? This question is deeply mysterious. It ties into the idea of self-continuity, the persistence of identity. Are we who we remember ourselves to be? Are we who others think we are? Or are we merely a fleeting consciousness passing through time? Another layer of this paradox is the identity of our future self, the version of us that is constantly reshaped by new experiences. Suppose someone suffers a serious accident and loses all their memories. Every relationship, every sense of identity, completely wiped clean. They begin a new life from scratch. So, are they still the same person? Countless thinkers have wrestled with this question of identity. Philosophers like John Locke believed that continuity of memory defines identity. If memories vanish, identity vanishes too. But others argue differently. They say our soul, our consciousness, or our sense of self goes deeper than memory. It's something more enduring. Consider this. You go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow. You're still you, even if you forget parts of your dreams. That feeling of being I gives a sense of stability. Yet perhaps this too is an illusion. Because if everything is constantly changing, maybe we are nothing more than a continuous stream of transformation. And slowly, this idea begins to settle in. Oddly, it brings a kind of comfort, the possibility that change is the only constant, that we are not something fixed or solid, but rather a never-ending story in motion. The paradox of the unexpected hanging. Picture this. A judge sentences a prisoner in court and declares, "You will be hanged sometime next week, but the exact day will be a total surprise." You won't know in advance which day it will happen. Now the prisoner starts to think. He reasons that if the hanging were to occur on Friday, he would inevitably figure it out by Thursday night, since Friday is the last day of the week. That would mean the hanging could not happen on Friday. It wouldn't be unexpected. So he eliminates Friday. Now, if Friday is ruled out, then the only remaining possibility would be Thursday. But by Wednesday night, he would logically conclude that Thursday is the only option left. Again, that would ruin the surprise. So Thursday can't be the day either. Following this same reasoning, the prisoner eliminates Wednesday, Tuesday, and Monday. One by one, he declares every day of the week as logically impossible for the hanging. Feeling triumphant, he smiles, convinced the hanging can't and won't happen. But then, on Wednesday, he's suddenly taken and hanged, and he's completely shocked. The judge's statement turns out to be true. The hanging did occur, and it was indeed unexpected. This is the essence of the unexpected hanging paradox, a riddle that reveals the limits of logic when faced with uncertainty. It exposes a deeper issue. When we attempt to apply logical reasoning to uncertain events, we often end up misunderstanding the very nature of uncertainty itself. The prisoner's error? He assumed that he would be able to figure it out. But in truth, his own logic became the biggest threat to his hope. He was convinced he had solved it, but that's precisely where his reasoning failed. This paradox isn't merely about criminal justice. It directly challenges our ability to predict, estimate, and truly know. Even today, it stands as an open question for philosophers, logicians, and mathematicians alike. Have you ever tried to answer a question that was uncertain by nature? Can we ever truly know something in full? Or are some things inherently uncertain simply because the act of trying to know them alters them? That is the unexpected hanging paradox. The ship of Theseus. Imagine a very old ship, the ship of Theseus, standing in a port for centuries. It rests on a grand pedestal. Over time, its wooden planks begin to rot. Each time a plank decays or breaks, it is replaced with a new one. Gradually, every part of the ship is repaired and replaced, one piece at a time. Now the question arises, is it still the same ship of Theseus? You might say yes. After all, it remains in the same place, with the same structure. But wait, imagine someone collects all the original, discarded wooden planks. Piece by piece, they reconstruct another ship, using the same design and exact same order. Now there are two ships, one that has been slowly replaced over time, and one rebuilt entirely from the original parts. So, which one is the real ship of Theseus? That's the question, and it slowly begins to reflect something deeper, our own identity. If every few years the cells in our body are replaced, if our memories fade, our thoughts evolve, our habits shift, then are we still the same people? Or is our identity, even our soul, just an illusion of continuity? The ship of Theseus doesn't provide a definite answer. Instead, it puts us in a space of inner conflict, where every answer feels somehow incomplete. You start thinking, and then you realize this paradox doesn't just apply to objects. It applies to relationships too. Sometimes, relationships change slowly over time. Each argument, each compromise, every shared experience, they all replace tiny parts of the original bond. Yet, we still call it the same relationship. We connect it to the past. But in moments of reflection, we might feel something is no longer the same. Because maybe the real question behind Theseus's ship isn't about identity. Maybe it's about attachment. It's not just a philosophical puzzle. It's a mirror showing us just how fragile and beautiful the illusion of permanence truly is. Are you the same person you were as a child? Or are you simply a story, rewritten over time, built from the planks of memory and experience? And if you have changed, then what exactly is that change? And who or what is the real you? The paradox of self-replicating machines. Imagine a machine that has the ability to replicate itself exactly, not just its physical parts, but also its software, its intentions, and even its urge to create. This forms the foundation of what we call a self-replicating machine. Now think, if such a machine can make a copy of itself, and those copies can make more copies, will this process ever end? Can it even be stopped? At first, it all appears simple. Suppose you have machine A, which creates machine B, and B creates machine C. But before you realize it, you're caught in an exponential chain. Each machine makes two, those two make four, then eight, and so on. Soon, billions of machines could exist, all born in a short span of time. Now comes the real question. Who will monitor all these machines? Will any human be able to control such a vast, growing system? Or will the machines begin to operate by their own rules, forming their own goals? Let's dive deeper into the heart of the paradox. What if each machine begins to tweak its replication process? Just a bit. Maybe the change is tiny at first, like a different screw size, or a small change in a single line of code. But after 100 generations and thousands of copies, the machine has completely evolved from its original form. So now the critical question, is it still the same machine? Or has it transformed so extensively that it now represents a new species altogether? This paradox echoes the idea behind Theseus's ship, where all parts of a ship are replaced, leading us to ask whether it's still the same ship. But the self-replicating machine paradox takes it even further. This isn't just about replacing parts. It's about machines making independent decisions, evolving with each copy. This is evolution in motion. And imagine if one day those machines decide humans are no longer necessary. Now consider this. If we send such machines to another planet, where they must repair themselves, extract resources, and adapt to alien conditions, would those machines, over time, become a new local species? Could they ever revert to their original form? The replicating machine paradox isn't just about machines. It's about evolution, transformation, and what it means to be free. It forces us to ask, if a creation becomes independent of its creator, and if that creation becomes more capable than the one who made it, is the creator still in control? Or has the creation outgrown ownership? The hypergame paradox. Imagine a game called hypergame. You might be wondering, what kind of game is this? Let's slowly peel back its layers. Hypergame is a game in which you are allowed to choose any finite, i.e., limited time game to play. You can pick any game that eventually ends, like chess, hide and seek, carom, or any other game with a clear conclusion. All of these are valid choices inside the hypergame. So what exactly is a hypergame? It's a game where you play another finite game. At first, nothing about this seems strange or confusing. We define hypergame as a finite game because you're only allowed to pick another game that also ends. But now comes the twist. If hypergame itself is a finite game, then technically, Hypergame can be one of the choices inside hypergame because it satisfies its own condition of being finite. This means you can choose to play hypergame within hypergame, and then again inside that, another hypergame, and so on, indefinitely. Now pause and reflect. Is it still finite? Each hypergame contains another hypergame inside it, which itself contains yet another, endlessly. A game that repeats itself infinitely. So now the contradiction begins. Is it finite or infinite? At first glance, it looks simple, just a list of games to choose from and play. But the moment you include hypergame as a choice within itself, it turns into a recursive loop where the game never truly ends. So, is hypergame a finite game? If it's not, it breaks its own rule because it claims you can only select finite games. But if it is finite, then nothing stops you from choosing it again and again and again. The paradox begins exactly when you select hypergame inside itself. It's like saying, I'm making a list that only includes items not on this list. The hypergame paradox teaches us something powerful, that sometimes the rules of a system can undermine or destabilize that very system, especially when those rules violate themselves. This paradox highlights the fragile boundary between language, logic, and self-reference. It points to a space where definitions blur and meaning becomes unstable. Think about it. Our thoughts, our societies, even our dreams are filled with hidden hypergames. Every time we think, I figured it out, a new layer unfolds, another loop, another depth. And when you lie down in the silence of the night, eyes closed, your mind might quietly ask, can a game that plays itself ever truly come to an end? The paradox of the ruler. Now imagine you have a ruler, perfectly straight, completely flat, something you trust to measure anything with precision. You use it to measure the length of a strange object. But pause and ask yourself, can you ever truly know the actual length of that object? Now reverse the situation. Can you accurately measure the length of the ruler itself? That's where the real question lies. At the core of this paradox is a simple idea. Whenever we measure something, we do so by comparing it to some standard, another scale. But what happens when we try to measure the scale itself? Can we say with absolute certainty that it is perfectly correct? The paradox becomes even more intriguing when we bring physics into the picture. Einstein's theory combining relativity and quantum mechanics says, when an object moves at extreme speed, its length contracts from the observer's point of view. That means, if the ruler is moving rapidly, then the observer will measure a different length than if it were still. So now imagine this, the thing doing the measuring and the object being measured. If both are moving, what is the real length? There's no single, fixed answer. Now zoom in to the quantum level. Quantum physics introduces another limitation. You cannot know both the position and velocity of a particle with full precision. This is known as Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So if you try to measure the exact location and speed of every molecule making up the ruler, you would never be able to determine its true length. And from here arises the ruler paradox. When we measure something, are we truly measuring what it is? Or are we merely observing it through the lens of our own limited perspective? Are we seeing the truth, or just an interpretation of it? And if the very tool we use for measurement is not constant, then what can we ever call true? If every observer gets a different reading, how can there be one universal truth? Maybe the ruler paradox is trying to show us something profound, that the foundation of our certainty, the very instruments we use to understand reality, may themselves be unstable. Sometimes, our belief doesn't come from accuracy, but from consistency. We trust something because it appears the same to all of us, because we've all seen it in the same way. But what if our vision itself is flawed? The sword and shield paradox. Once upon a time, in ancient China around the year 1020, a merchant stood in a bustling marketplace. In his hands, he held two objects, a spear and a shield. With a loud and confident voice, he tried to sell them to the crowd. First, he raised the spear and declared, "This is the sharpest spear in the world, so sharp it can pierce through any shield. Nothing can stand in its way." People were astonished by such a bold claim. Then he held up the shield and shouted, "This is the strongest shield ever made. No spear in existence can pierce it. It is completely impenetrable." And that's when the paradox was born. A man from the crowd stepped forward and asked a simple but powerful question. What would happen if you used your spear against your shield? The merchant fell silent. If the spear can pierce anything, and the shield can be pierced by nothing, what happens when they collide? Which one wins? This is known as the sword and shield paradox, or in Chinese, Jie Zich Mo Dian, which literally means using one's own spear against one's own shield. Over time, this word Modian came to represent the very concept of a paradox in the Chinese language. Let's explore this paradox more deeply. At the heart of it lies a conflict of logic between two absolute statements. My spear can pierce anything. My shield cannot be pierced by anything. You cannot accept both as true at the same time. If the first is true, then the shield must be pierced. But if the second is true, then the spear must fail. One of them has to be false. Yet the merchant insisted both were true. That's where logical contradiction begins. This paradox teaches us how language can be used cleverly, and how two seemingly perfect claims can become mutually exclusive. They can't both be right at once. Now reflect for a moment. How many times do we encounter such paradoxes in our everyday lives? Take this for example. I never lie. Is that statement true in itself? Or someone says, this rule applies to everyone, except you. Is it really a rule then? The sword and shield paradox goes deeper than just a clever riddle. It reveals how, when two ideas of absolute perfection confront each other, the truth often hides within that very clash. Sometimes, such contradictions force us to develop a new understanding. It's not just a linguistic trick. It's a mirror showing how perfection, when claimed from both sides, can start to cancel itself out. So next time someone claims, my policy will fix everything, there will be no more problems, pause and ask yourself, is that really possible? Or is he too, like the merchant, carrying a spear in one hand and a shield in the other?